Hey everybody, Howard Tiersky here. Welcome again to the Winning Digital Customers Show. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm excited about getting back to restaurants and going to the theater and sports games and normal life now that the CDC has told us that we don't have to wear masks and people can congregate, at least vaccinated people, fully vaccinated here. Hopefully you are too. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I thought I'd spend a little time today in honor of the excitement of getting back to some normal activities and talk a little bit about restaurants. And I want to zoom in on one topic, which is the topic of restaurant menus. You know, restaurant menus changed quite a bit during coronavirus. I don't know if you experienced them, but I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the changes that restaurants were forced to make during coronavirus relating to their menus. And then I really want to talk about it, though, in the context of a broader question, which is as we move out of this pandemic era to this transition into the post-pandemic era, whatever you want to call it, are we going forward or are we going back? Meaning, in what ways within our businesses are we going to resume back the way things were before we had to upend them and change them for the pandemic? Or where are there things that we've altered, changed, where not only do we want to keep them, but we want to keep heading in that direction going forward. And I want to talk about the topic of restaurant menus. And, you know, you could think of it as an example. And I want to encourage you in your own business to think about what would be the equivalent of what I'm going to say about restaurant menus that is something that maybe you should be thinking about in your own business. You know, I'm sure there's aspects of all of our business that are going to go back to the way things were before. And that's good. I mean, going back to not having masks seems good. I don't feel like we need to go forward to some world in which we double down on masks. Hopefully we won't have to do that. But of course, there may be other things that we don't want to go back on. Oops, am I out of focus? That's weird. Do I look okay? Looks like I'm totally out of focus now.
You're a little out of focus.
What can I do about that, I wonder? Using a different camera. So if I go back, sorry, everybody. All right, I guess I'll just stand a little closer. I don't know. All right, so much for my new camera. Anyway, well, there, it popped back in. All right, don't change anything. Anyway, so, you know, there may be areas where we want to move forward. So what do I mean? Let's be specific. Well, you know, there we go. So, you know, for decades, things have been becoming more paperless, right? I mean, it used to be offices were filled with file cabinets. And we've moved, of course, to so much kinds of digital correspondence. The Kindle and ebooks is a $16 billion business. Every year, more and more of our reading is done electronically. So we have seen this wave long before COVID of moving things on paper back to moving it forward into a world of digital. And in the world of restaurant menus, which is really what I want to focus on today, of course, for some time, we saw in the quick service food category, moving from, of course, they weren't paper menus anyway, but moving to some kind of a digital or electronic menu. And that's been going on for some time. And if you go to Burger King or Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or any place like that, you're probably going to see a lot of screens that show you the specials and show you the prices and all these types of things. And of course, there are a variety of benefits that they get by moving these menu boards into the digital realm. But nevertheless, pre-pandemic, we really weren't seeing that in the realm of restaurant menus. Now, you may be thinking, who cares? So what? I'm going to tell you why you should care over the next few minutes. But what happened with the pandemic, of course, is that, of course, restaurant dining was severely limited, but to the degree that restaurants were able to be open, they didn't want to hand out menus to people because, of course, the risk then is that same menu gets passed from customer to customer, and it is potentially a carrier of germs. And so instead, we had this type of situation where the server would bring you a QR code typically to scan with your phone so you could access it on your phone. Or at some restaurants, once we got the hang of it, you don't even need to wait for your server. You could just sit down at the table and there was the QR code and you could immediately scan and start looking at the menu. You ever sit in a restaurant at the table just waiting for someone to bring you a menu? That's annoying, right? Well, you know what? That problem was eliminated by simply putting those QR codes in place. So as soon as you sat down, you knew that you could access the menu. And of course, also not have to worry that it's covered in coronavirus. Now, in the original versions of these menus that I noticed when I was first experiencing this new way of looking at a restaurant menu, they kind of tended to look like this. A lot a lot of restaurants simply took a PDF of their menu, put it on a web page, put a QR code to it. And so you'd often be in the situation where, I don't know about you, but I couldn't read these things. I've got reading glasses. I'm 52 years old. So, it was a little bit of a hassle. You had to put your glasses on and then use your fingers and zoom in and zoom out and try to navigate your way around. Over time, some restaurants got better at creating more like responsive, friendly, mobile friendly types of menus. Frankly, some didn't. Some to this day are still showing their menus as PDF files and forcing customers to try to figure out how to navigate the way around. So in some ways, that experience is not optimal, but some restaurants, as we got into the latter half of coronavirus, had found platforms or tools or other things to make these menus more friendly, more like what you might experience on something like an Uber Eats or a DoorDash, that sort of thing. So now, but there's another level to this, and we don't see it very often, but we see it in certain places. And one example is what OTG is a company that runs a lot of restaurants and stores and things at about, I think it's about 10 or 11 major airports around the world. And so if you've been, the airport that I typically fly out of is Newark Airport. And most of the restaurants or other food areas within Newark Airport, at least in Terminal C, where I usually go, have these tablets at every single seat. So you can see here how, every seat you sit down, and as soon as you sit down, there's a tablet. And what these tablets do is they show you the menu, right? You can actually see everything that's on the menu, what the prices are. You can zoom in, you can see larger images of the food or whatever it is that you're ordering, food, drink, etc. And you can actually order right there from your seat. So you don't even have to, not only can you see the menu as soon as you sit down, but you can actually go ahead and order right from your seat. You don't even have to interact with a service person until they come and bring you your food. And so I want to suggest that if we think about the idea of going forward versus backward, while this example that I'm showing you is, I see it very, very rarely. The only place that I can recall ever really seeing this is in airports. But obviously this technology could be used in other places. And it doesn't even necessarily require supplying tablets. The right platform can enable any restaurant to do similar types of things. Now, of course, like any kind of digital transformation, it's a little bit more complicated, if not a lot more complicated, to enable people to order from their seats than to just give them a PDF file that they can use to look at and then tell your traditional server what they want and go from there. But see, isn't that what digital transformation is all about? Taking it from the kind of brochureware stage to really enabling a completely different kind of customer experience and customer journey. Now, why bother with this? Why we can see that, this was implemented at airports. Most restaurants moved to the QR code to have you see the menu on your device, really only because of coronavirus and the concern of germs. Why not just go back to giving people the paper menus we had before? Well, I actually think there are an enormous number of reasons that restaurants should consider moving forward and not back with respect to this issue of menus. And I want to walk through what some of those reasons are. My main reason for talking about this is not to try to convince you that you should make your menus this way, because, well, I'm assuming that the vast majority of people watching this are not necessarily in the restaurant business. Perhaps a few are, my friends at Darden and other places, but that's not the main reason I'm talking about this. I want to encourage you to think about, where are the opportunities in your business where you may have changed something for coronavirus, like the menu for QR codes, and very often that's going to be a change that you made to move towards digital, right? Because so much of what we did to move from the physical to the digital, a lot of the things we did in coronavirus was moving something from physical to digital, whether it was a buying online, picking up in the store, or picking up curbside, or something as simple as turning a physical menu into a digital experience. But let's just think for a minute of all the benefits, and these aren't all realized even in what's being done in the airports right now. But imagine this vision that I'm going to articulate for you very briefly about what a future for restaurant menus could look like. If you knew that whenever you walked into a restaurant, you just scanned that QR code and it brought up like a little application that would allow you to browse all the items and browse the prices, which, by the way, could be constantly updated, right? So if the prices were changed for some reason, if a restaurant wanted to have different lunch prices versus dinner prices or daily specials, they could simply, change that content all the time. You wouldn't need to give them the menu and then like the separate little thing. Have you ever watched in a restaurant, they hand you like 4 things, like here's the wine list and here's the menu and here's the daily specials, and maybe 3 is usually what it is, not 4, but it's kind of a lot to deal with, right? All these different things you're being handed. So imagine the simplicity of just having one place where you could see it, The specials could be updated daily. You could see photography. It doesn't that help you? I love when I go to a restaurant and there's photographs of the food. The funny thing is, you rarely see this in a really nice restaurant, where you usually see this as like a diner, right? So the lowest end restaurant provides you the best visual information to know what your food's going to look like. But the higher end restaurants, most of the time, they don't. So that's kind of, to me, kind of ironic, because actually, and furthermore, even in a diner, you're generally only going to find 1 out of every 5 or 10 items. They can't put a photograph for every item, because it's a classic problem with the physical world. You only have so much space. You only have so much space in a brochure. You have only so much space on a store shelf. But obviously in the digital world, we can make everything a tap away and provide photography of everything. And I think personally that would help me order, to know what something looks like, and also what ingredients are in there. And you have space to do other things like suggested wine pairings and things like that, which is something that the application that OTG uses in the airports also does. If something's no longer available, the kitchen is out of the broccoli cheddar soup or whatever it is, you could update that right away. How often have you ordered something? You go through that emotional decision process. Should I have the halibut, or should I have the fettuccine? I don't know. What should I do? Finally, like, you know what? I'm going to have the halibut. You tell the waiter, I'm going to have the halibut. He writes it down, and you're thinking, yes, I've decided on the halibut. The halibut is coming. And then the waiter comes back 5 minutes later, says, excuse me, sir, I'm so sorry. The halibut is sold out. Even though you weren't originally sure you wanted the halibut, at the point that you get told that, all of a sudden you really wanted the halibut, right? You've increased. That's that psychology, like Robert Cialdini talks about in his book. The sense of scarcity makes you want it even more, since now you can't have it. So that's not a good, positive customer experience. Imagine the things that are no longer available in the kitchen or just aren't on the menu anymore. You don't even show them. You don't show them crossed off, nothing like that. You're just not showing those things anymore. Easy to do. Easy to do once you have a menu system that's integrated with your micros, or whatever your point of sale system that's integrated with your other back end components that are controlling those aspects of your business. So I don't mean to minimize what it takes to get something up and running, but once it's there, it would be very easy to reflect when something's out of stock. You could also, you ever go to the, especially if you go to a diner, or you go to someplace like the Cheesecake Factory, and they hand you the book, right? How many pages long is the Cheesecake Factory menu, right? I mean, I feel like I've just been given an assignment by my AP English teacher. It's like, holy cow, I have to read this whole thing. Personally, I don't eat red meat. There's some other things I don't eat. So I'm going through this menu page after page after page, trying to find the things I can eat, dealing with this vast quantity of options. I mean, it's great that they have so many alternatives, because I'm more likely to find something that I want, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming. So again, imagine you can go in there and say, yep, don't show me anything with red meat. Don't show me anything spicy. I'm lactose intolerant or gluten-free or whatever your constraints or limitations are. Only show me those things, and be able to, just like you would navigate a website or any kind of app. Also seems really valuable, right? It seems like it would really help someone get to what it is that they want more quickly. Or imagine you bring up a menu like Instagram style. Doesn't even show the names, only shows the pictures of the food. Maybe somebody would like to browse their menu in that way. And then, of course, just like in the application that OTG has, imagine you could place your order. You don't have to sit there having decided what you want, waiting for the waiter. How often have you sat in a restaurant? And by the way, I'm pointing out all these things to just highlight how many points of pain a system like this has the potential to take away. And as I often talk about, the best way to differentiate a business, the best way to figure out how to innovate and how to transform, is not to ask yourself, what can technology do? But where is my customer having some level of pain, friction, inconvenience? And I think it's easy to see how you could, with a tool like this, which is already in existence and being used in airports, if you further built on it, you could remove many of these points of pain. So if you could place your order without having to wait for the waiter, it's kind of funny, they're called a waiter, but actually you tend to be the one doing the waiting, right? You're waiting for the waiter. The waiter's never waiting, right? The waiter is darting around from table to table to the kitchen and back. That's usually what happens. So to avoid having to do that, as soon as you know what you want, you can place that order. It goes right to the kitchen, and they can start cooking your food, which, by the way, potentially gets you fed faster, which may be what you want since you're at a restaurant, presumably to eat. And secondly, if you get in and out of that restaurant more quickly, not only will that make you potentially a more satisfied customer, but also the restaurant potentially can turn that table faster. And one of the key business criteria for a restaurant is how many times, especially during busy times, how many times can I turn that table in a given day? If they could put one more, meal, one more set of people ordering food at that table on that given day, that's potentially more revenue for that restaurant, at least during busy time. So you could place your order for food. You could see what's going on with your order, right? Like when you order something from Amazon, how many times have you been sitting there waiting for your food and you're like, gosh, it's taken a long time, and you're starting to wonder, did they lose my order? Did they forget my order? Did they bring my order to the wrong table? Could my order just be sitting there under the warming lights and my waiter just hasn't had time to go get it? All of that uncertainty could be removed by some kind of indicator that lets you know when, where your order is in the status. Now, I'm not saying that everybody wants to spend their entire time looking at their phone, following the status of their order, but to know that you have the comfort of knowing anytime you have that feeling of uncertainty, you can check and find out what's going on. And by the way, to the degree that sometimes your order is sitting under the warming lights, if the servers, they don't have to do certain things anymore. We're removing some labor from that wait staff, because now they no longer have to necessarily come to your table to take your order, to come back to your table to see if you need anything else. They can make sure you get your food on time, hopefully. Instead of running around taking orders, they can focus more of their time and attention on just making sure that when your order is ready, it can be brought right to you. And presumably the waiter would have some sort of app version of the app themselves. It's dinging them and letting them know when an order is ready. In addition, a tool like this, and this is true in the airport version, allows you to place supplemental orders. So if you want another margarita, or you decide it's even something that they're not going to charge you for, maybe you just want water or more condiments, you can not only get better service, because instead of having to wait for the waiter, flag them down, you flag down a waitress, she says, oh, this isn't my table, then you got to flag the right person. You forget, who's my waiter anyway? I can't even remember. I got to find the right person just to get some ketchup. Another point of pain of dining out that should be able to be eliminated if you can simply go into the app and say, hey, I want to order another drink, or I need some ketchup, or whatever it may be. And again, if the wait staff doesn't have to focus on certain tasks like running around taking everybody's order, then they have more time to make sure that when you request that additional appetizer or dessert or drink, they can make sure that they get that right to you. And anyone who's been involved in the restaurant business knows that most of the profit is made on drinks, especially alcohol, appetizers, and desserts, not on entrees. So the more you can make it easy for someone to order more of those types of things. Have you ever been in a restaurant and thought, I'd like to get another drink, another glass of wine? But by the time the waiter finally comes around to ask, you're thinking to yourself, the meal's almost over, forget it, I'm not going to order it now. That happens to me. Well, every time that happens, that's money the restaurant has lost, not to mention a slightly reduced experience for the guest, for the diner. So another opportunity for more revenue and better customer service if you don't have to wait for a waiter. And of course, if you have any other kind of problem, you asked for your steak to be medium well, it's actually medium rare, or they brought you the wrong thing, or whatever it may be. So again, the waiter can be more attentive to you when you flag, and I keep saying waiter, obviously waiter, waitress, wait staff. Maybe females also like to be called waiters now, like actresses want to be called actors. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to offend anybody. The fantastic people who serve you your food at your restaurant. That's what I'm talking about, right? So, and then of course, when you're done, you can pay your bill. How many times have you sit at a restaurant wanting to pay your bill, sitting there with either waiting to find the waiter to get your bill, or sitting there with the bill with the credit card, waiting for the waiter, or the waiter's taking it, and now you want to just get out of there, and they want their table back, and yet you're waiting for this whole process of paying the bill. Imagine you could eliminate all this. So look at all these benefits. Now, what's interesting to me is, why on earth has this not happened before? If you look at how many benefits restaurants receive by moving to a digital version of menus, it seems to me when I look at this like a complete no-brainer. But as I talk about extensively in my book, Winning Digital Customers, organizations, people tend to be resistant to change. There's a certain kind of calcified, entrenched way of doing things. The good news is that coronavirus has kind of given us a kick and forced us to move in a certain direction. The question again is, are you going to go forward from this direction, or are you going to go back? And by the way, one of the complaints that I've heard about digital by people who run restaurants is that, in the digital age, everyone wants to take photos at restaurants. And so the wait staff, when they're supposed to be serving the food, wind up having to deal with people saying, hey, excuse me, would you take a selfie? Would you take a picture of our family at the table, et cetera? And so there's this attitude, this mindset about digital, which is that this has created a big problem for the wait staff at restaurants, because they don't want to say no, they work on tips, but at the same time, it's slowing them down from getting their real work done. Well, I would suggest to you that this is emblematic of the opportunity of digital, which is to say, let's free our employees from tasks where they're not adding a lot of value, like writing down everyone's orders, and free them up to be engaging in things where they're actually interacting with your customers. Instead of viewing this type of interaction where the waiter is being asked to take a picture of the family as something that's getting in the way of them doing what they're really there to do, let's free them up so that that becomes an important, critical part of what they do, engaging with the customers, making them feel welcome, doing extra things for the customer seems to me to be a huge bounty by freeing up their time from doing some things that the customer would actually, in many cases, prefer to do on a self-service basis. And of course, if you take these pictures, they may go up on Instagram promoting your establishment, promoting the restaurant. So again, not only is it good for the customer experience, but it's potentially supporting customers who essentially are doing viral marketing for your restaurant. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to use this as a sort of a case study and talk about what does it look like heading forward from where we are with restaurant menus instead of going back to the old way, and ask you to think about what is it in your organization that might be the equivalent of the restaurant menu, something that you've changed or adapted, and now you have the opportunity to kind of keep heading in that direction, even if all you're doing is the equivalent of a QR code that leads to a PDF of a restaurant menu, which obviously ain't that great of an experience. What does it potentially look like if you keep heading in this digital direction instead of going back to the pre-coronavirus ways? And so, just to end with a quick plug for my book, which is to say, it's not always easy. There's all kinds of barriers to be able to drive that kind of transformation. That's really what my book, Winning Digital Customers, The Antidote to Irrelevance, is all about. And if you want to read the first chapter for free, you can access that at wdc.ht/free chapter. So hopefully you found this interesting, useful. Hopefully it's inspired you to think a little bit about what is your equivalent to the restaurant menu. And hey, if you're in the restaurant business, hopefully I've persuaded you to take a real look at this as an opportunity to really transform that experience. Because hey, I'm looking forward to dining out, and I would love my new post-coronavirus, as marred as my dining out experience has been during coronavirus. I would love for the payoff for that suffering. I mean, I'm joking. Many people have suffered much more than me during coronavirus, but I would love for the payoff for that to be an even better dining experience on the other side. So hopefully that's where you're headed as well. Thanks as always for watching, for listening. Sorry if it was a little blurry today. We're going to get that fixed. And hey, keep transforming. I'll see you next time.